Ever wonder if your furry friend could be a hero? This heartwarming story of a dog's simple trick that saved an entire airplane from disaster will leave you speechless. See how this dog's love for his owner and a little bit of training made all the difference. The morning light was soft. It painted Jake's small apartment in shades of gold. Jake woke up slowly. He felt a familiar weight on his chest. A wet nose nudged his chin. Jake smiled before he even opened his eyes. "Good morning, Cody," he whispered. Cody, a magnificent golden retriever, responded with a happy thump of his tail against the bed. His fur was the color of honey. His eyes were dark, intelligent pools of unconditional love. He was more than a dog. He was Jake's anchor. Jake sat up. Cody hopped off the bed, his nails making soft clicking sounds on the hardwood floor. He grabbed his favorite rope toy and trotted back, dropping on Jake's lap. It was their morning ritual, a few minutes of gentle tug-of-war before the day truly began. "All right, you big goof," Jake laughed, grabbing the rope. "You win. You always win." Their life was a rhythm of simple, happy moments. After a quick breakfast for both of them, it was time for training. Jake was a former soldier. He had seen things he wished he could forget. The quiet world he lived in now was his medicine. Cody was his most important prescription. Jake had trained Cody since he was a small, clumsy puppy. He didn't train him to be an attack dog. He trained him to be a thinking dog. He taught him to listen, to observe, and to communicate. "Find it, Cody," Jake would say, hiding a worn leather glove somewhere in their small apartment. Cody's nose would twitch. He would lower his head, sniffing the air, the floor, the furniture. He moved with a quiet focus that was amazing to watch. He wasn't just smelling. He was solving a puzzle. Within a minute, he would be sitting patiently in front of the bookshelf, looking up at the exact spot where the glove was tucked behind a row of books. "Good boy." Jake would praise him, his voice filled with genuine pride. He would give Cody a small treat and scratch him behind the ears, right in the spot that made his back leg kick with pleasure. But Cody was more than just smart. He was fiercely protective, not in an aggressive way, but in a quiet, watchful way. On their walks in the park, if a stranger approached too quickly or too loudly, Cody would place himself between them and Jake. He wouldn't bark or growl. He would just stand there, a solid, warm presence that said, "I am here. Be careful." This deep, unspoken bond was the foundation of their world. Jake gave Cody a home and a purpose. Cody gave Jake a reason to face each day. He was a furry, four-legged guardian who chased away the shadows of Jake's past. Their journey together was already incredible. They just didn't know it was about to become the stuff of legend. The airport was a storm of noise and hurried motion. People rushed past with suitcases. Announcements echoed from unseen speakers. Jake felt a familiar tightness in his chest. He hated crowds. He hated the feeling of being trapped. Cody sensed it immediately. He pressed his body against Jake's leg, a warm, reassuring weight. Jake reached down and ran his hand along Cody's back. The simple act of feeling his soft fur calmed Jake's racing heart. "It's okay, boy," Jake murmured. "Just a few more hours." They were moving. A new job, a new city, a new start. Jake was leaving San Francisco behind for the green promise of Seattle. Cody was coming with him, of course. As Jake's certified service animal, he was allowed in the cabin. They boarded the plane. Jake found their seats by the window. He settled in, making sure Cody had enough space at his feet. The big dog curled up, his head resting on Jake's shoes. He seemed calm, resigned to the strange metal tube that rumbled beneath them. The flight attendants went through the safety demonstration. The doors closed with a solid thud. The engines began to whine, growing louder and louder. Jake looked out the window as the ground fell away. The city became a map, then a patchwork of colors. For the first hour, everything was normal. The gentle hum of the engines was a constant drone. Passengers read books, watched movies, or slept. A flight attendant offered Jake a drink. He politely declined, his attention focused on Cody. Then he heard it. It wasn't a loud noise. It was a subtle, unusual sound, a soft clunk thump, followed by a faint, high-pitched vibration that seemed to come from the floor beneath his feet. It was gone as quickly as it came. A man across the aisle looked up from his newspaper. "Did you hear that?" he asked his wife. She shook her head. "Hear what, dear?" "Just a plane." Jake tried to dismiss it. Planes made noises. It was normal, but a knot of unease tightened in his stomach. He looked down at Cody. The dog was no longer resting. His head was up. His ears were perked, swiveling like tiny radar dishes. A low whine escaped his throat, so quiet only Jake could hear it. His body was tense, a coiled spring of anxiety. "Easy, boy," Jake whispered, stroking his head. "It's just a little turbulence." But it wasn't turbulence. The air was perfectly smooth. The plane flew straight and level. Yet, Cody's anxiety grew. He started panting, his breaths coming in short, shallow bursts. He nudged Jake's hand with his nose, not for affection, but with a sense of urgency. Jake's own unease grew. He trusted Cody's instincts more than his own. The dog had a sixth sense for things that were wrong. He could sense a thunderstorm hours before it arrived. He could feel Jake's nightmares before they even started. The high-pitched vibration returned, stronger this time. It was a faint tremor that ran through the floor, up Jake's seat, and into his bones. It felt wrong. The steady rhythm of the flight had been broken. Something was out of sync. Jake looked around. Most passengers were oblivious, but he saw a flight attendant pause in the aisle, her head tilted, a questioning look on her face. She too had felt it. Down at his feet, Cody's quiet anxiety was about to erupt into a heroic, desperate act of warning. Cody's whining grew louder. It was no longer a private sound between him and Jake. It was a distress cry that turned a few heads. He stood up in the limited space, his body trembling. "Cody, lay down," Jake commanded in a low, firm voice. It was a command Cody had obeyed thousands of times. It was one of the first things he had ever learned. But this time, Cody ignored him. His eyes were locked on the floor panel directly in front of their seats. His nose was pressed against the thin carpet, sniffing frantically. Then, he did something he had never, ever done before. He started to dig. His paws scratched at the carpet, a frantic, desperate motion. He clawed at the seam where the panel met the rest of the floor. A sharp bark escaped his lips. It was not a happy bark. It was a bark of alarm, of pure, undiluted panic. "Cody, stop," Jake said, his voice now sharp with a mix of embarrassment and growing fear. Passengers were staring. A woman in the seat behind them leaned forward. "Can you please control your dog?" she asked, her voice laced with annoyance. But Jake wasn't listening to her. He was watching his dog. He knew Cody. He knew his discipline. For Cody to disobey a direct command, to act this erratically, meant something was terribly, fundamentally wrong. The dog's training was being overridden by a primal, powerful instinct to protect his human. Cody let out another sharp bark and began pawing at the panel with more force. He looked up at Jake, his eyes wide with a message that Jake was finally beginning to understand. Danger. Right here. Listen to me. The unease in Jake's stomach turned into ice-cold dread. The strange noise, the vibration, and now, his perfectly trained service dog was acting like a wild animal, trying to tear a hole in the floor of an airplane at 30,000 feet. This wasn't just anxiety. This was an alert. The dog's bravery was in his disobedience. He was willing to break every rule Jake had ever taught him to get his message across. His frantic actions were a trigger. A child nearby started to cry. The man across the aisle put down his newspaper, his face now a mask of concern. The low murmur of the cabin began to shift into a tone of alarm. A flight attendant, a kind-faced woman named Sarah, hurried down the aisle. "Sir, you need to get your dog under control now," she said, her voice professional but tight. Jake grabbed Cody's collar, but the dog was strong, his muscles bunched with purpose. "I know. I'm sorry," Jake said, his voice shaking slightly. "But you don't understand. He's trying to tell us something." He looked from Cody's desperate eyes to Sarah's concerned face. He had to make her believe. The lives of everyone on this plane might depend on it. The chain reaction had started with a dog's instinct. Now, it was up to a human to see it through. "Sir, please," Sarah, the flight attendant, repeated, trying to keep her voice calm. "The dog is upsetting the other passengers." "Listen to me," Jake pleaded, his grip tight on Cody's collar. The dog was still whining, still trying to get at the floor panel. He is a highly trained service animal. He has never, ever acted like this. He's not misbehaving. He's alerting. Sarah looked from Jake's earnest, frightened face to the distressed dog. She had been flying for 15 years. She had seen it all: drunk passengers, medical emergencies, panic flyers. But this was different. There was a raw sincerity in the man's voice. And the dog wasn't just being loud. It was focused. It had a target. She remembered the strange vibration she had felt moments earlier, the one she had tried to dismiss. "Alerting to what?" she asked, her professional skepticism warring with a growing sense of unease. "I don't know," Jake admitted, "but it's something right here." He pointed to the floor panel that Cody was obsessed with. "We heard a noise. A clunk. Did you feel the vibration?" Sarah's eyes widened slightly. She had felt it. She nodded slowly. Her training told her to calm the situation, to reassure everyone that everything was fine. But her gut, honed by years of watching people and sensing trouble, told her to listen. This man trusted his dog. Maybe she should trust the man. "Okay," she said, making a decision. "Okay, keep him as calm as you can. I'm going to talk to the captain." She walked quickly to the front of the cabin and picked up the intercom phone. The passengers watched her, their conversations hushed. The sense of unease had now spread through the entire plane. Jake knelt on the floor, wrapping his arms around Cody's neck. "It's okay, boy. It's okay. You did good," he whispered into the dog's fur. Cody relaxed slightly, leaning his weight against Jake, but he was still trembling, his eyes still fixed on the spot. In the cockpit, Captain Evans listened to Sarah's report over the headset. "A dog?" he asked, his voice flat with disbelief. "You're telling me a passenger's dog is causing a scene?" "It's more than that, Captain," Sarah's voice crackled back. "The owner says it's a service animal, and it's alerting to something in the floor at row 12. The owner and I both felt a vibration from the same area a few minutes ago." "Sir, I have a bad feeling about this." Captain Evans was a man of logic and procedure. He flew by the instruments, by the book, but he also knew that sometimes trouble didn't show up on a gauge. He trusted his crew. He especially trusted Sarah, his most senior flight attendant. If she had a bad feeling, it was worth paying attention to. A vibration at row 12, he mused, his eyes scanning the complex array of dials and screens in front of him. Everything looked normal. Engine performance was perfect. Cabin pressure was stable. But the report from a trusted crew member, combined with the bizarre story of the dog, was a red flag he couldn't ignore. In his line of work, you didn't take chances. You erred on the side of caution. Always. He keyed the microphone for the cabin announcement. His voice, calm and authoritative, filled the tense silence. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We are experiencing a minor mechanical issue. It is nothing to be alarmed about. However, for the safety and comfort of everyone on board, we will be diverting our flight. We will be making a precautionary landing at the nearest suitable airport, which is in Boise, Idaho. The crew will be coming through the cabin to prepare for our descent. Please remain in your seats and follow their instructions." A wave of nervous murmurs swept through the passengers. But the captain's calm voice had its intended effect. Panic was replaced with anxious obedience. The flight attendants moved through the aisle with practiced efficiency, their faces reassuring, their actions swift. Sarah gave Jake a quick, meaningful look as she passed, a look of gratitude and shared apprehension. Jake hugged Cody tightly. The big dog had done his part. He had sounded the alarm. Now, it was up to the humans to get them all home safely. As the plane began its slow descent, Jake looked out the window at the ground getting closer and closer. He prayed that Cody's incredible, instinctive act of bravery had been enough. The descent was tense. Every passenger was wide awake, their eyes fixed on the seat in front of them or peering out the windows. The flight attendants moved with quiet purpose, their calm demeanors a fragile shield against the fear that hung in the recycled air. Jake kept one hand on Cody's back the entire time. The dog was quiet now, as if he knew his job was done. He had passed the warning to his human, and his human had passed it on. Now, they could only trust. The plane banked sharply. Through the window, Jake could see the runway lights of the Boise airport rushing up to meet them. He braced himself. Emergency vehicles, their lights flashing silently, were lined up along the tarmac. This was real. The landing was smoother than Jake had expected. The tires screeched as they hit the asphalt, but the plane held steady. The engines roared in reverse, and a collective sigh of relief filled the cabin as the aircraft slowed and turned off the main runway. When the plane came to a complete stop, a strange silence fell. Then, one person started clapping. Soon, the entire cabin erupted in applause for the pilots. But Jake knew who the real hero was. He looked down at Cody, who looked back up at him, his tail giving a soft, tired thump against the floor. As the passengers were being deplaned, a ground crew in bright vests boarded. Sarah, the flight attendant, approached Jake. "Please wait here," she said. "The captain wants to speak with you, and the maintenance team wants to check that panel." Jake nodded, his heart still pounding. He and Cody waited as the last of the passengers filed out, many of them giving him and his dog curious, grateful looks. The woman who had complained earlier paused by his seat. I'm sorry about what I said," she stammered. "Your dog, he's amazing." "He is," Jake said with a small smile. The maintenance crew arrived with a toolbox. They knelt down where Cody had been digging. Using a special tool, they pried open the floor panel. It came away with a metallic groan. One of the mechanics shone a bright flashlight into the opening. He was silent for a moment. Then he let out a low whistle. "Well, I'll be," he muttered. He looked up, his face pale. "You're not going to believe this." Just then, Captain Evans emerged from the cockpit. He was a tall man with graying temples and a serious expression. He walked straight to Jake. He knelt down and looked at the opening in the floor. The chief mechanic explained what he saw. A crucial support strut for the fuselage frame had a massive, visible stress fracture. A thin, silver line snaked across the thick metal. And worse, a primary hydraulic line that ran right beside it had been slowly leaking, its fluid dripping onto the fractured metal, corroding it further. At cruising altitude, the mechanic said, his voice grim, "With the pressure changes, this strut would have failed. Completely. The hydraulic line would have burst. It would have been catastrophic. We would have lost all flight controls." Captain Evans stood up slowly. He looked at the mechanic, then at Sarah, and then at Jake. Finally, his gaze fell upon Cody, who was sitting patiently, as if he understood everything. The captain took a deep breath. He took off his hat, holding it in his hands. "I've been flying for 30 years, he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I've never seen anything like this. Your dog didn't just save this flight. He saved the lives of all 186 people on board, including mine." He extended a hand to Jake. "On behalf of my entire crew, thank you." Jake shook his hand, speechless. Then the captain did something that brought tears to Jake's eyes. He knelt down in front of Cody. The big dog licked his hand. "And thank you, hero," the captain said softly, scratching Cody behind the ears. News of the miracle dog of Flight 255 spread like wildfire. The story was on every news channel. A dog's love and instinct had averted a major disaster. Later that night, in a quiet hotel room paid for by the airline, Jake sat on the floor with Cody. The events of the day felt like a dream. He had ordered a room service steak, just for the dog. Cody ate it happily, his tail wagging. When he was done, he rested his big head on Jake's lap, just like he did every morning. Jake wrapped his arms around him, burying his face in his soft, warm fur. "You saved us, boy," Jake whispered. "You saved all of us." Cody just looked up at him with those deep, loving eyes. He didn't know about heroes or fame. He only knew that his human had been in danger, and he had done what he had to do. In that quiet room, far from the cameras and the crowds, the bond between them felt stronger than ever. It was a testament to a simple, powerful truth that sometimes the greatest loyalty and the most profound courage comes on four paws, with a wagging tail and a heart full of love. Their incredible journey had reached a new height, not in the sky, but right there on the floor of a hotel room, a celebration of a bond that had proven to be truly unbreakable.